Okada is Nigeria's first and foremost motor taxi hailing startup, which raised over $7 million in VC on its platform. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Dami and Abi. Hand over you to my colleague Hopewell, who will moderate this session. Hopewell, just before I do that, just to say, Olaniwun Ajayi is a leading firm in Nigeria. We provide end-to-end support to all our clients across all sectors of the economy. We have a very deep and seasoned technology innovation and fintech group that focuses on providing support to businesses in that space, other businesses using technology to disrupt traditional business or pure play fintech companies. And we're proud of the work that we've done in that space, and we look forward to an opportunity to work with you. So I hand everyone over to Hopewell to take it from here. Hopewell, thank you all for this session.
Thank you, Dami, for that introduction, and I hope everyone can hear me. And also for providing the context for why this conversation is necessary and critical. And the hope is that by the end of this webinar, every listener will learn a thing or two from our esteemed panelists. And with that, I'll dive right into the session with an opening question addressed to both Dami and Abi. So globally, the cross-border payments market recorded a total of 176 billion in 2021, and it's estimated to grow to about 200 billion by 2027. And in Nigeria, over the past 2 or 3 years, we have also seen some amazing statistics, given that diaspora remittances to Nigeria rose from 17 billion in 2020 to about 19 billion in 2022. So what would you say are the main factors that are contributing to the growth of cross-border remittance in Nigeria? And secondly, what impact does cross-border remittance have on the Nigerian economy? So I think, Dami, ladies first, please, you can go first, following which Abi can also follow.
Thank you. So a key driver of remittance is migration. Migration from both skilled workers and unskilled workers. And this is because you move to a new country, you gain improved economic advantage, you start to earn more money, and the incentive for hundreds of years has always been, once you start to make more money, you want to improve the lives of friends and family that you left wherever your first home was. So migration has always been a key driver of remittance. From the Nigerian perspective, our migration patterns are very defined. So there is migration, like I mentioned earlier, of skilled workers and unskilled workers, primarily those migrating for educational reasons. Another driver of remittance has always been trade. So trade from an intra-Africa perspective, trade or trade between merchants and consumers in Africa and outside Africa. So those are the two factors that continue to drive remittance, migration and trade.
Thank you, Dami. Abi, if you could go next, just kind of explaining what we think the main factors contributing to the growth of cross-border remittance is, before we then discuss the second question.
All right, thank you very much, Pupo. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Just as Dami has explained earlier, I think the two major factors that that drive remittance, and I can tell you for a fact that we're even yet to see the boom. Think about the statistics around migration today. Out of Nigeria to a few countries. Think about the Canada, think about the US, think about the UK as well. That's like one factor that is definitely going to enable us see more traction with remittance volume, coming to Africa. And I would also say that this is not something that is just particular to Nigeria alone. It's something that cuts across a few countries in Africa. You'll be very surprised about how much of Ghanaians are traveling all the way, just like Nigerians are migrating. So think about this affecting a few markets, a few countries in Africa. So think about Nigeria, think about Ghana, think about Kenya. you'll be very surprised about how much of Africans are, think about markets like France and talk about Francophone West Africa. So think about how many Africans are migrating from Francophone West Africa to France. Think about Senegal to France. Think about Cameroon to France. Think about Cote d'Ivoire to France. So it's not just something that is particular to Nigeria. It's something that cuts across multiple markets in Africa. Besides even the skilled workers traveling or migrating, think about the students. These are early stage income earners who are migrating with the hope of getting better life, getting better opportunities, earning better income. They have families back home. We understand the story around black tax. You always want to send something back home for your people at home. There's a lot of factors are definitely driving this, but the two major ones, as Dami has highlighted, migration. That's like one thing. You really can't cut that off. That's like the biggest driver. Then also think about commerce. We're looking more around opportunities that we can explore with commerce happening within a few corridors like Nigeria to Turkey, Nigeria to China. Those are like the biggest corridors. Nigeria even to the Middle East. Think about Nigeria to Dubai, UAE trade. So those are opportunities that exist in those markets. And I can tell you for a fact that those are like two major reasons why you would see the boom. Those are factors that would drive increase in remittance volume into Africa or out of Africa. So that's it.
Thank you, Abby. So I think two things that I've taken from what the both of you have said is the Japa movement is a key driver for cross-border remittance. And secondly is that it's actually a Pan-African phenomenon. So it's not just Nigeria that's experiencing this increase in diaspora remittances back. And there's also the critical role that commerce and trade plays. And it's not just to the UK and US. There's actually several other opportunities in the Middle East and certain African countries. So speaking to the second question, so what impact do we see that cross-border remittance will have on the Nigerian economy? Abby, since you went last, you can go now.
So I would say that the impact is we will definitely see the impact of increase in remittance. You'll see that impact play on GDP of the nation as a whole. Think about how much of the whole trend today around the scarcity of FX is as a result of the fact that if we can increase remittances, or by the time remittances increase into Africa, we should see a very big impact on GDP of the economy, of GDP of the nation as a whole. And we don't know how soon that might begin to trickle down in, but we know that the factors that we defined earlier are very are well-known factors that would definitely drive the increase that would trickle down to the effect of what remittance will play on the economy. So definitely we should expect to see like better GDP volumes increase for the nation.
Thank you, Abby. Dami, do you have any other things to add to that before we move to the next question?
I do. Yes. So yeah, Abby mentioned the impacts to GDP. But one thing that from like a human or real perspective, the value of remittance has always been you're sending money to people at home, and the overall impact is that you're improving the quality of the lifestyle available to your friends and family. So remittance has always been a way to improve overall or to reduce poverty rates, right? So if more people have access to disposable income, it improves their access to healthcare, improves access to education, ultimately leading to a general country level reduction in poverty rates. Again, remittance inflows tend to support things like importation and exportation businesses, which again has another impact to what Abby mentioned of improvements in GDP for countries. So remittances, as you know, are very important for countries, and this is because they have far-reaching impacts to real-world experiences of the average citizen that you can tie right back to the overall improvement of the fiscal metrics for countries.
Thank you, Dami. So it's like an intricate web. And everything, for every remittance that comes into Nigeria, it impacts the economy as a whole, and it also impacts the lives of each and every recipient of the funds. I think my second question is for Abby. So before now, sending money internationally has always been frustrating for customers dealing with banks and legacy money transfer operators. And in recent times, something that has been gaining popularity is the use of digital platforms for cross-border remittance. And it's for consumers, there's speed, there's convenience, and even for some cost efficiency of using these digital platforms. So Abby, how do you think fintechs in the cross-border remittance space are contributing to financial inclusion in Nigeria?
So I think first, before we, and I'm a very big advocate of prioritizing what is relevant first. Before we talk about financial inclusion, I think we should talk about reliability, in the sense that what is reliability in this case is how reliable is it means to send money. As at 2017, how reliable was any means available at that time to send money to countries like South Africa, to send money to Kenya? I can tell you in all honesty that it was really tough at that time. There were really no platforms that allowed you to send money across, multiple African countries. And one of the things that we stood out for was, let us build the infrastructure for consumers to be able to, make payments across multiple African countries. Let us solve the problem of reliability of what is available in the first instance. Then we'll come back to talk about financial inclusion, which is, okay, how do we get the people who are not banked to be banked, right? But even those that are banked today, how are they able to send money? If I asked you, sometime in maybe 2019, what was it means to send money to Ghana, you would most likely say Western Union. But how accessible was it? It was pretty much not accessible. But today, with almost about 5 taps on your phone on the cheaper app today, we can send money to almost 21 countries in Africa, right? Without even visiting a bank. That's like, availability, and that's, um, reliability, right? Then we'll come back to talk about inclusion, which is, okay, how do my mom, right, who is old and maybe, not as tech inclined as I am, be able to do all these things without having to worry. But I think that it is also very important that over the last few years, we've seen fintechs reinvent the wheel, and we've seen companies, build solutions to power infrastructure for payments in Africa. And we're not there yet. We're still building. It's a long-term journey, and we're building one day at a time, I would say. But I think the opportunities are endless. What we're building is timeless, and it's priceless, in the sense that there's a lot of problems that we have to solve. So think about how that guy who is in Balogun market can send money to China. Think about how that woman who is in Ibadan needs to buy fabric from Ghana, needs to send money to Ghana, right? And that's like how we can basically power commerce. And we've seen fintechs reinvent the wheel across this. We've seen my company, we've seen Damisi's company do that. And I can tell you that, we're just getting started. That's like it for me.
Thank you, Abby. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what I got from
100%.
you. We're still building. Financial inclusion is not it's not at the top of the scale right now. We're just building and getting the ecosystem to the marginal or the maximum state it can be, and then we can focus on financial inclusion and banking beyond bank. Dami, do you have anything to add to this?
I do.
Different perspective?
No. I mean, everything Abby said is right. But I think that the work of financial inclusion is actually the work specifically for banks. So everyone likes to talk about financial inclusion when you're thinking about remittance. But effectively, what that means is just giving more people access to operate within the digital financial economy. So from a remittance perspective, as remittance businesses, our focus is, let's make sure that whoever wants to send money internationally can do that in a quick, secure, and affordable way, right? The role of banks that operate in the local ecosystems, their responsibility is to make sure that they're able to provide these financial tools, bank accounts, wallet apps or whatever, right? That we as remittance companies can terminate funds into. Now, that is the first leg of it. But financial inclusion really means that if I am able to terminate funds into a bank account, the bank is supposed to be able to provide additional services to make those accounts tailored to the lifestyle of whoever is the remittance recipient. So while we as remittance companies can continue to work with banks, we can't do the work of financial inclusion alone. It has to be in combination with the works that banks are doing to make sure that the financial accounts or receptacles of funds are tailored to meet the expectations of the average consumer. So this means that, yes, you're telling people, come and open accounts with us. What is the value of opening my account? Why can't I just receive the money over the counter and keep the money in my house? Well, there's a limit to loss of funds. Then I'm able to get access to loans. If I want to buy a phone, I can get access to a loan from my bank. This is a reason for me to want to open an account. Do you understand? So the work of that financial inclusion cannot be only on the remittance side. It has to be in combination with the work that the banks are doing.
Thank you, Dami. And I believe you mentioned customer experience is key, and this is a good segue into my question for you. So providing customers with seamless and convenient customer experience that caters to their respective needs is crucial for IMTSOs. And for context to the audience, IMTSOs are the entities that facilitate cross-border remittance. And it's critical to attract and retain customers. In your view, are there any initiatives or complementary service offerings that these companies in Nigeria can undertake to enhance customer experience and convenience for customers, while also addressing or tailoring the services to their diverse needs and expectations?
I think the second part of your question actually answers the first part, which is that our focus always has to be tied back to providing value to the ultimate user of our service. Now, as a remittance company, we know that our users are on both sides, right? The person that's signing up on my company's product, Sendsprint, for example, is my user. But the person that is receiving money through my product is also a beneficiary of my service. For a long time, and this is one of the things that sets my company apart from a lot of the other remittance players in the space, historically, we've always assumed that the only way to share of your newfound economic reality is money, which is absolutely fair. Money does have a role to play. But if we think about how we as Africans have always communicated love and care and all these obligations that we feel, money does have a role to play, but there is a role to play for non-financial offerings, right? So this means that being able to understand where your customers are at the moment, understand where they intend to be, providing the services to meet their needs once they get to when their needs change, from a sender perspective and a recipient perspective becomes important. I'm speaking in abstract. Bringing it right back to reality, this means that for the person that has just moved, right, 2 years down the line, you're really just focused on building your life. So any money that comes in when you have disposable is when you're going to send. Eventually, you're going to start to think, for a lot of us, the reality of Nigeria right now means that people think, once you move, you don't want to come back. But that doesn't actually reflect a lot of the reality. When people move, they want to come back and build businesses. They want to support older parents at home. They want to build homes and things like that. So there is still a need to send money home. When I'm now starting to think about, sending those huge volumes of monies, do I have a product that is able to understand that need and support me? When I am thinking about, let's move from the Nigerian context, if I wanted to participate in purchasing diaspora bonds, do I have a product that is able to support me being able to do that? If I was not born in Nigeria and I don't have a Nigerian passport, I cannot open a bank account in Nigeria. But my parents are Nigerians. Is there a service that is able to help me leapfrog the challenges within the Nigerian financial ecosystem to support me wanting to participate? Understanding the nuances of the consumer and their needs is then the responsibility of companies like ours to be able to say, this is what our customer is doing today. This is where they're intending to go. Let's provide the services to meet them. Same thing applies on the recipient side as well. Sure, I want to receive money today, but what if I actually want to start to request money from people? This is something that remittance companies have understood and have now made, to become the norm. It's no longer an innovation in the remittance space to be able to say you have a product that is able to request money, but this is because remittance companies also understand the needs of the recipient. So yeah, your question answered your question.
Thank you, Dami. That was enlightening. So for the remittance companies, understanding the nuances and the needs of the customers, and then solving the problems that you've identified and developing tech and apps or whatever, tech, the app, innovation or innovating around those problems you've discovered or identified and finding a way to address those needs that the customers have. So I'll bring it back to Abiodun. What are those key trends and novel methods that you have observed in the cross-border remittance space across the world? And how can the Nigerian legal framework evolve to unlock benefits of these trends and methods for Nigerians?
So I think for me, and Dami has said it all, for me, I would speak more from a product standpoint in terms of what is evolving. So initially, early days when we started business in Nigeria, it was more of let us enable Africans to send money into, into Nigeria or into Africa, from different markets. And over time, we realized that the trends, constantly change. So think about when the funds are received in their wallet, what do they do with that, in their wallet? The initial pattern used to be they withdraw to their bank account and they need the money settled into their bank account. But over the last few years, we've started seeing different trends. The users or the consumers are becoming more confident to have that money, in their wallet, saved in their wallet for a little time. Now, what are they asking for? Are they asking for interest? Are they asking for yields? So over time, the patterns are beginning to change, right? And we're beginning to see them request, especially for like, new features, new products, new use cases, even the transfer patterns of what they are doing in terms of how they make payments, right? Will tell you the next trend of what you should, serve to them. And over time, we've seen those things change. So think about Nigerians who want to, pay for services over the internet. What are they asking for? They're looking for a means to make digital payments. Okay, what can we offer them? Okay, we'll give you a digital card that allows you to make digital payments over the internet. Over time, you're beginning to see customers ask for, okay, you know what? I don't have a family that wants to send me money. I don't have a cousin or a relative that wants to send me money. I basically want to be able to earn an income, and I need a means to accept payments from, my partners or from clients or from, as freelancers or netizens or digital entrepreneurs. These are people that basically have income, coming into Nigeria. That's still remittance coming in, right, in form of like, personal income and all of that. And, there are no more questions around, can you give us a US bank account? Can you offer X, Y, and Z for us? So we're beginning to see the trends change. And we feel that over time, the regulators need to understand, even from a legal framework, that there needs to be some sort of like leniency, not only to remittance companies, but to digital financial service players, right? And where we can offer a few other things, to our customers. And it's not because we want to do a lot of things. It's not primarily because we want to do 1,000,000,001 things at the same time. It's just more around the fact that the customers are asking us, the users are asking us to provide these services to them. And you're also seeing the trend in terms of, where the money is going to, what the payments are being made for. And that tells you the kind of services that, you should offer to them as a next level solution. And independently, a lot of the time, we don't do this ourselves. We look for partners who will do this and we can, work together. So think about how partnerships scale our business as well. And I think that's like, the long and short of it for me from a product standpoint in terms of, the trends and nuances that we're seeing, as a remittance company or business here in Nigeria.
Thank you, Abby. So it's similar to what Dami said. It's really, the use cases are driven by consumer needs. You are innovating around what consumers ask for. And in terms of the Nigerian legal framework, your view is actually that the tech often outpaces the regulation. So if the regulators are willing to work with the cheaper cash, the Sendsprint, to kind of follow the trends and see how we can both work, that's the sector players as well as regulators, into ensuring that these benefits are enjoyed by Nigerians as and when it's required. So Jami, I have a question for you, and we've discussed the exponential growth in diaspora remittances, and this is indicative of the business opportunities in the cross-border space. But do you think there are any barriers? What are the key barriers faced by IMTSOs in Nigeria, and what are the biggest opportunities for IMTSOs in the next 5 years?
I think barriers and opportunities are pretty much the same thing, right? So we operate in a regulated space, and the opportunity for growth is a reflection of the opportunity that our regulators provide. If our regulators present an understanding of advancement in technology, understand the demands that consumers are making of us from a sender perspective and a recipient perspective, and are able to provide an enabling environment for innovation to take place, that becomes an opportunity. If the inverse happens, then that is a major blocker to growth. Unfortunately, fortunately, we can't operate outside the scope of what has been permitted. Like Abby said, oftentimes what you find is technology continues to outpace regulation. So the opportunity for us continues to be if our regulators are able to understand the demands that our customers are making of us. From a financial or fiscal standpoint, there is still the reality that the monetary policies and operations in Nigeria today continue to present impact to exchange rate volatility, which unfortunately drives a speculative behavior that has an impact on, the fluctuations on the exchange rates. Now, consumers that are incentivized to operate in a speculative way will not send money as frequently as they can, because they're trying to get the most value when they think they can, which means then for a business like ours that thrives on the routineness of that behavior, people will not send money, right? We've earlier spoken about the impact of remittance to individuals and all the way to country GDP levels. There is a negative impact on countries when people are not sending as they can. There is an impact to trade if people feel like they have to operate in a speculative way before they engage in commerce or trade. So again, all this ties back to the strength of the financial system, the monetary policies in place, and the openness of our regulators to adapting to innovation, which again, these are opportunities, but if not taken as opportunities, they then become major hindrances to growth.
Thank you, Dami. So openness of the regulators, flexibility, willingness to work alongside the sector players. And you also spoke about how speculative behavior driven by some of the monetary policies and forex volatility is also affecting how cross-border remittance companies, the operations of cross-border remittance companies. Thank you for that. And I think a follow-up question that I have would be in relation to, this is also for Dami, in relation to the recent CBN circulars that now provides that IMTSOs should have an e-Naira and Naira payout option. This was a 180-degree policy from its 2021 stance that IMTSOs should not disburse remittances in Naira. So what's the impact of this regulatory directive, and how can the Nigerian government and regulators work with IMTSOs to address some of the challenges posed by forex scarcity?
I think there's something to be said about perception of a regulatory standpoint, right? And this is something that maybe not necessarily just, the regulator in view at the moment. In general, the role of the regulator is to ensure the stability of, the financial system. But there's also something to be said around, how these kinds of changes are communicated and education is done to the average consumer. The regulatory policy that was in place in 2021 that mandated inflows to be in USD had a significant impact on remittance because it demanded a lot of technology uplifts that many companies just did not have. It also demanded a significant amount of education that most people had not needed to have, right? And like you said, shortly after that, then, regulation changed again, and it demanded e-Naira to be the termination point. There needed to have been education to the general population of what e-Naira is, how it works, the benefits, and now we're back to what we used to have 3 years ago, right? Now, the reasoning of the regulator needs to be explained to the average user, so it feels like there is a consideration for the average user who is the ultimate beneficiary of a remittance transaction. And if that doesn't exist, then it presents an inconsistent language, right? There's something to be said around, the technology behind e-Naira. There's something to be said around why did we need to have e-Naira be the preferred choice. But the reality is the average consumer just wants to receive money. And I previously mentioned that some of the things that people look out for a remittance company is, the convenience of the service, the accessibility of the service, how quickly can I get my money? If none of those things are being answered, then there's a loss of faith in the financial ecosystem, which will lead people back to operating within the black market, completely cutting off oversight of the regulator, which is something that the regulator does need to have to understand what is actually going on.
Thank you, Dami. I think one key point for me is the need for public enlightenment when certain policies are issued from regulators, so that everyone is carried along and they understand the benefits that they would understand what it stands to benefit by reason of the policy change. Thank you, Dami. And last question that I have is addressed to Avi. So the CBN IMTSO guidelines speaks to certain partnerships that IMTSOs may explore for the purpose of cross-border payments. What would you say is the role of partnerships with foreign technical partners and local agents such as banks in the provision of international money transfer services?
I'll say that initiative is super amazing because one of the things that constantly drives business growth, especially for innovative entities like my company, is partnership. So like I said earlier, we can't do everything on ourselves, by ourselves. We can't do everything on our own. And one of the things we always look out for is partnerships. What partner do we need to get to power this business? What partner do we need to get to power this product for us? And I think that notice or that circular makes a lot of sense in terms of understanding that partnership has a lot of role to play. I mean, think about how you can scale across multi-markets, the expansion plans, the technology plans. A lot of these things are driven by partnerships. And under no illusion would you assume that it's a short-term journey that you can do all by yourself. You have to basically think about partnerships of how to drive this innovation across all your plans and all that you plan to do as an entity or as an MTSO. And one of the things we look out for, like I said earlier, is who are the right partners that we need to talk to? Technical partners. Are we looking at QA partners? Are we looking at banks and all of that? And if you think about it, the last mile settlement of this solution that we're providing today is being powered by the banks. So think about how do we settle, to that guy in the village that needs to get money, through remittance, right? We can't do that because we're not set up to, get the settlement done, to that remote village, right? And who are the guys that will do that for us? The banks. How are the banks able to do that? Through their agent networks, through their, agent infrastructure. That's how, this can be done. And we're looking at more opportunities that we're willing to explore, with the banks. Constantly we're speaking with the banks. We're looking out for, opportunities in terms of how to explore settlements, how to explore remittance settlements, or all sort of partnerships that we can look out for with the banks. I think the banks are like the ultimate players here that every digital player like ourselves has to work with, whether we like it or not. They are the giants, trust me, but they're not going anywhere, and they will always be here. And as long as you also want to remain in business and you also want to keep being in business, you have to play with them. That's it.
Thank you, Abby. The banks are the big dog. There's no way, because as remittance companies continue to build, they must leverage partnerships with the banks. And every remittance company must dimension the different types of partners that it needs. And you have to continue having conversations with your banking partners to see how they can assist with achieving some of the plans that you have as a remittance company. Thank you, Dami, and thank you, Abby. We have a couple of questions. Let me see. Okay. Okay, the first question that I have is from Musa Raji, who says, what is the best way to benefit the Nigerian economy through your remittance? Do apps like Lemfi create the same impact? Kindly advise. So because this question is a Q&A session, any of the panelists welcome to answer. Best way to benefit the Nigerian economy through remittances.
I think I'll go. Do you have someone you're trying to send money to? I think one thing that has come out from this conversation is, as long as this money is coming from, somewhere outside Nigeria, for example, and it's coming to someone in Nigeria for a purpose, is the person using it for, healthcare, for education, or just even for their lifestyle, it is having an impact on the Nigerian economy, because then they're going to spend that money, right? So yeah, just the simple process of sending an international transaction to a beneficiary in Nigeria is ultimately going to have an impact on the Nigerian economy. Other, say, more long-term impacts can then be things when you're considering, say, purchasing things like diaspora bonds, or you want to invest in real estate or other things like that. But ultimately, as long as it's an international transaction to a beneficiary in Nigeria, it will have an impact. It's a question of the size of the impact.
Thank you, Dami. And Mr. Raji, I hope that answers your question. The second question is from Ajayi Oyewumi, and he says, what uptake are you seeing with respect to corporate, not retail individuals, adopting new tech in making remittances? What are the key factors that have driven the increase, if any? So, Dami, since you took the first one, Abby, please.
I'll say that over the last 1 year, we've seen trends of mid-sized entities, MSMEs. We've seen trends of like MSMEs take up opportunities in terms of how to settle remittances, majorly, and I'm saying this now specifically for MSMEs, majorly for trade purposes. So think about that business that needs to import items from China. Think about that furniture entity that needs to get supply from Turkey. So think about that market woman who needs to import items from UAE, right? They have a feeling that logistics is not our problem. To get our items into Nigeria through the customs is not our problem. We have carriers who will do that, right? But how do we get the money there, right? And we're seeing them, understand that digital players like my company and a few other IMTSOs are ready to do that for them, right? Okay, how do we take that money from Nigeria? Give us the Naira. How do we take that Naira from you? You don't worry about that USD, and we're going to settle that supplier in those countries for you. Because trade needs to happen constantly. Commerce needs to happen. And it's something that happens around the clock. There is no peak time. There is no downtime for it. It's something that happens almost around the clock. And we're under no illusion, and I'm saying this again clearly, that it's not a short-term journey. It's not something we're doing here because, the market is experiencing a downtime right now. No, this is global economics now. And And they also want to remain in business. The economy is tough, but they still want to remain in business. And how do they move the money? How are they going to send the money? So not only are individuals the uptakers of this opportunity or this trend, we're seeing, you know, the corporate, the MSMEs, you know, take advantage of these things because at some point the banks have failed them, and they're looking out for alternatives of how do I send the money, right? You know, I need to buy fabrics from Ghana, right? How do I send the money to Ghana? Who's going to do this for me? So if you think about it from a trade perspective, the opportunities are endless. And those companies, I mean, the corporates are looking out for partners like ourselves that would empower their payments for them.
Thank you, Abby. We're fast running out of time, so I'll take two more questions. Another question is addressed to you, Abby. Please don't mute yet. So this is from Titi Aino Scott, and she specifically addresses this question to you, Abby, and it's very loaded. So it says, what's the gap between remittances to Nigeria from countries outside Africa and countries within Africa? What do you think is responsible for the slow pace of financial transaction and ultimately remittances within African countries? And the last question is, do you think PAPS will help? And does cheaper cash have any interaction with PAPS in powering remittances? So I think because it's a double-decker question, we'll take it one after the other. What's the gap between remittances to Nigeria from countries outside Nigeria, that's offshore, and then countries within Africa? So I'm guessing Africa to African countries to African country, and from offshore to the African continent. What's the gap in terms of remittances?
I would say it's a wide gap. Reason being that, and we haven't really taken, you know, the statistics, but I think it's good. This question is also, it gives me the opportunity to go back and take the statistics. But off the top of my head, I would say that we've seen more, and by records, we've seen more transactions coming, you know, the America, the UK, the Canada, the Europe into Africa or into Nigeria more than Africa to Africa. Reason being that there is a lot of trade happening in those borders. There are lots of, you know, Africans out of Africa. There are few Africans that are well-to-do out of Africa that would want to send value into Africa than Africa to Africa. We've seen that happen a couple of times. But I can tell you for a fact that it's more on outside of Africa into Nigeria than any other corridor. So those are like the biggest corridors that we see. So think about the US, think about the UK. The US used to be one of the biggest corridors. We're expecting or we're projecting that the UK and Canada will see more in maybe another decade. With the way things are going, with the migration, I can tell you for a fact that we're going to see more in that corridor. So think about Canada into Nigeria, think about the UK into Nigeria. Even the UK is beginning to see an uprise right now, but we're going to see over the next maybe 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more, you know, volume coming from the UK and Canada into Nigeria than what we've experienced from like the US into Nigeria.
Okay.
And the second question, in terms of, let me just quickly wrap this up. In terms of PAPS relationship, yes. PAPS has promised us a lot, and we're working closely with them. Nothing cast in stone yet, but I think that it will take, let me put this African adage there, it takes a village to raise a child, right? It's not just something that PAPS alone will be able to do. So I'm expecting that PAPS is willing to explore partnerships with a lot of other companies like ourselves, and a few other entities to make this work in the grand scheme of things. We're constantly in conversation with them. We're not live yet, but we're constantly in conversation with them. We're looking out for more opportunities in terms of how to explore the relationship and see how we can power, you know, payment across Africa. And it's something that we're willing to work closely with them with.
Okay. Thank you, Abby. We only have time for one more question, and this will be for Damisi. This question is by Mustahan at EBC, and it says, how feasible is it to have the remittance companies infuse e-Naira into their product usage or accessibility?
So when the CBN regulation, when the CBN policy came out, a lot of remittance companies had already done the work of, you know, having e-Naira as a payment option on their product. So most remittance companies or many remittance companies today already support termination into e-Naira wallets. We're thankful that CBN has also now come out in July saying that termination can also happen in simple Naira. So this means that termination can then happen directly into Naira bank accounts. So today, some remittance companies support termination into e-Naira wallets.
Thank you, Damisi. Thank you very much. Thank you, Abby. For the other questions, what we'll do is we'll put it together and we'll send it to the panelists. And once we get the responses, we'll send it to the attendees of the webinars just so you can see. And you're also welcome to follow each of the panelists on LinkedIn and I guess send your questions. And whenever they have a chance, they will respond. I see someone here saying he has dropped Damisi LinkedIn invite, kindly engage. So thank you once again. I'll hand over to Emeka so he can give the closing remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hopeful. So as we approach the close of this insightful webinar on cross-border remittance in Nigeria, I would like to take this moment to express our deepest gratitude to each of you for being a part of this enriching dialogue. I hope you found this discussion to be informative and engaging. We're also pleased to learn so much from the valuable insights and perspectives shared by our expert panelists, Abby and Dami. These are executive leaders in the cross-border remittance space, and their expertise and passion have fueled our understanding of the complexities and the immense potentials for this sector. So Abby and Dami explain how migration and international trade are the major drivers of cross-border remittance in Nigeria and how it plays a crucial role in supporting families, stimulating economic growth, and fostering financial inclusion. We also talked about all the opportunities and how to address the challenges that lie ahead in this sector. So at Olaniwun Ajayi, we believe that continued innovation and collaboration amongst stakeholders, that is the service providers and the regulators, would enhance the role of cross-border remittance in Nigeria and accelerate Nigeria's economic development trajectory. We encourage everyone to stay informed about the latest developments in the financial technology space by following our social media handles across LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We usually disseminate insightful information on issues that cut across law and the technology space. We will also be hosting the next edition of this webinar series sometime in the first quarter of 2024, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you once again for your participation. Please do have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Have a good afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank you
all.
for having me. Bye.
Let's keep the conversation going. Bye.